Where do you see Bitcoin going? I know I saw one of your interviews prior, and you were kind of mentioning a few months ago, but things changed so much that, there's the flippening happening. Do you still think that that's going to be the case?
No, I think the flippening before ordinals, I thought that I was expecting the flippening to happen, but now I think it's not going to happen because the momentum has changed, like the direction of the wind has changed, and there's now people see the massive opportunity on Bitcoin.
Welcome to Unraveling Crypto. Today we have Trevor Owens. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So I came into the space like about almost a year and a half ago, maybe two, and you definitely were one of the people that I started following to learn more about the space, about stacks, about everything. You're managing partner at Bitcoin Frontier Fund and CEO of Ninja Alerts. Well, I think we can just get started.
Awesome, let's do it.
I love to start with, what are you most grateful for right now?
Wow, what a good question. I think I'm having the time of my life in my career right now with everything that's going on Bitcoin and stacks. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time since I was in university, like so many years ago now, and I've been building businesses, and it's just fun to be able to share uh, the mistakes that I've made with other founders and help them avoid making those same mistakes. And also, I've been doing coaching for uh, like one of my previous startups was like a education company on Lean Startup, and we grew that around the world. And so then I shifted to like building products. I'm a full stack developer myself, so I spent like 10,000 hours coding, and now I'm kind of back to uh, the first part of the story. Like I'm doing the same thing I did again, but in a new environment, and I feel like that's given me a leg up, I guess, in the space. And so it's just been fun to kind of build on those skills and take it to the next level. And I'm really grateful for the support from the community. I'm grateful for, of course, the Stacks community, Manib, all the executives who believed in me to invest in our fund at the start. And I'm also grateful for um, all the people on Twitter, running Twitter Spaces. When ordinals came up, that was a big moment, and I've been running. Ran 60 Twitter Spaces like over the past previous like 5-6 months, and it was always a struggle to get an audience to break through. And then when ordinals hit, like everything changed. And so I'm pretty grateful for that, for myself, but also for the fact that we're seeing the culture on Bitcoin change to become more about innovation and possibilities rather than about like naysaying and attacking people who hold other cryptocurrencies. So yeah, it's a great time to be in the space. I'm also, of course, just grateful for my family, and I think I am the only thing I'm not grateful for is that I had to shave my beard recently because of a bet I made online.
Well, I was gonna get into it. So I took a screenshot, and on February 17th, you made a tweet that said, if Stacks touches $1, you would shave your beard of 10 years. And you did. How are you
Yeah,
feeling? So are you feel like you're missing a body part?
yeah. I feel embarrassed when I look at my face. I yeah. It's like, I mean, I'm used to it now. Like I hadn't seen my face in 10 years, so
Yeah.
um, I didn't recognize myself, and I was like, "Wow, my neck is so long," and like it was like a optical illusion.
Yeah.
But I'm used to it now. But then when I look at the old pictures of me, I'm like, "Oh man, what did
Do
I
you
do?"
miss it?
Yeah,
Are you gonna go back to the beard?
I'm working on it. I'm working on
Okay.
it. It's gonna take a while.
Oh man. I mean, I think that was like one of the greatest moments on Twitter this year so far. just and then you made a video about it, and it was oddly interesting. Like it's just
Yeah,
the random stuff always sticks even more.
yeah, yeah. That was fun. Yeah,
Um,
that was the plan, to make a video. So
yeah,
yeah,
awesome. So I'd love to get going with the next question, which is, what's your superpower? And I think you kind of touched upon it, but that thing that comes very effortlessly, it's just innate to you.
it's a great question. I think probably being adaptable is maybe one of them. So I've always like since I was a child, like I had a great parents, and like my dad is a very good manager and a very like hard worker. Has like he was in the merchant marines, which is like a civilian part of the military, so he went to like that kind of like military school, and so that was like my childhood, like set whenever he was home, like Saturday morning, 7 a.m. You know, waking me up. And I'm like, as a kid, I just want my the thing that was like the highlight of my life was like Saturday morning cartoons. But when my dad was home, it'd be like a list of chores like this long. And so and it was very tough, but I think it taught me, like, I hated it as a kid, but now I look back on it, I'm really grateful for it because it taught me to be able to do things I didn't want to do. Um, and so I think that's been a recurring theme, as an entrepreneur, is like, you always have to adapt to what's going on. Actually, adaptability is the number one most important factor for a successful entrepreneur. Persistence is like the next one, but if you are too persistent and you can't adapt, you're going to be dead. Like you're going to just drive off a cliff. And so, like being able to, like, when I was younger, I took some programming classes, but I was never like a developer. And then after my first company, like I became a developer, full stack, and then coming into the Stacks ecosystem, you have to learn everything from scratch when it comes to like how this new Web3 world is working. I had to like learn how to do Twitter Spaces. Like it's like whatever the game is always changing, and so whatever you have to be able to adapt and learn and change yourself. And so um, a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? And so you want to be able to be as objective as possible and look at the data and get multiple perspectives from smart people, and then make a conviction bet yourself, and then be able to, like, you know adapt yourself to the market rather than try to persist your way through it without by just doing it the way you want rather than the way that like the market's going to accept.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to, I mean, this kind of reminds me of like forcing things to happen and it's just not working out, and forcing is just being exhausted. And I think as entrepreneurs, and like especially that, but in life, you're faced with things that sometimes just ask you to start over, pivot, or change direction. And humans are really stubborn. We don't like to do that, and especially when it's something that we love. So I think that's where I would love to get started with you. As an entrepreneur, what has been like your biggest failure, and lessons, and then what has been your most successful stories?
Yeah, I mean, my previous venture was basically a failure. I mean, it wasn't like we raised venture capital and we didn't have like a big exit, right? Like we had many small successes. Like we had a product that was generating 250K a year in revenue. We did a few $1 million in revenue over the years. But that's like when you sign up and when you raise money and you sign up to do that, like that's not a success, right? Like an exit or like getting the next round is more of a success. And that was a very painful process, especially like after we raised our seed round. Like we raised a seed round from like some of the most successful, one of the most successful or like notable and well respected investors in probably in the world. And he yeah, like we had like everything good going for us in the seed round, but then when you get to the Series A, it's actually much harder. Like um, 95% of startups don't raise a seed round, and then when you're part of that like 5%, you think you're like awesome, but then 70% of those companies of that 5% uh, don't raise the next round. So it's like the game keeps getting harder. After Series A, it gets much easier, but we raised funding without having product market fit, which you can do at a a seed round. It's something that I try to recommend founders not do, like, because as soon as you do that, the clock is ticking, and then you know putting together that A round is needs to be done very deliberately. Like the first day you close your seed round, the next day you're talking to your investors about the A round. Like that's like you need to be like that. Like for me, it's like I raised a seed round. I'm like, oh my god, I can like rest. Like I went on the as soon as we closed our seed round, the first thing I did was I booked a plane to Venice, Italy, and took like the first vacation I had in 3 years. And but like what you're supposed to do, I mean, you could still take a vacation, but like like when you get back, you're like kind of like you're still nervous and you're anxious, but you are kind of relaxed. Like you feel like you bought yourself some time because now you have like a few $1 million in your bank account. But what you should be doing is like never stop raising. Like you need to be talking to the investors to pin down like what is that success metric to do the next round, and you need to start talking to other investors about that next round from day one, so that way you have like and it's like hard, like people aren't just going to tell you, they're not just gonna be like, oh, just hit these numbers. Like it's like you have to get it out of them, like you have to like work them, like you have to like corral them to be like, here's our vision, here's what we're doing. Like they have no idea, right? And so like you need to constantly educate them, explain them, for them to get a good idea of what that's going to look like. And then you need to lean into that, like every month sending updates about how you're getting closer to that, and that's how you like put together an A round. That's not what we did at all. Like we I didn't know to do that, right? Like, but it's like we raised $1.5 million, and then it's like we had a software business and we had an education business, and we were like spreading ourselves thin. We also we hired a lot of people. Our burn rate went way up, and me and my co-founder, our philosophy was like, which is not which is not bad, I guess, but like for me, my personality, it was bad, which is like, hey, let's just like you know um like go hard, right? Like let's just like up the team, spend the money. Like we didn't waste any money, you know what I'm saying? Like we like negotiated salaries, like we paid ourselves less, like we were very frugal with the funds, but we're like, let's scale up and go, right? And then um the thing that a lot of founders don't realize is that once you start to have like 6 months of runway left, like if you have 18 months of runway, you really have 1 year of runway, because as soon as you start to hit 6 months of runway left, like people on the team are going to start to be like, what's going on, like what's going to happen. People start to quit, like the wheels start to come off as you get towards that like end of that 6 months, or towards that 6 month and like 4 months left. And that's like extremely stressful. Like there'd be like it would be like month to month, I'm like, at the end of month is coming along, and I'm like having like a panic attack. I never had a panic attack, by the way,
But
but like
almost.
I wouldn't say it was close. Like I don't want to like trivialize having a panic attack, because I
Yeah,
never
just
got like
really
there. But like
stressful.
I'm
Yeah.
just like the most stressed I've ever been in my life, which is like like trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to make payroll? Like how like do we have 3 months left? Do we have 2 months left? Do we have 4 months left? Like where can we cut? Like where did this oh, the legal bill from the lawyer came in last month, so the burn was higher. Like it's a very like bad place to be in. Um, Now if you like, I think there's some founders who can do that, where they just like scale up, go, and then it's like 3 months left, and it's like, hey guys, it didn't work. Like email the investors, like, hey, we're gonna start sending some of your money back. We're gonna unwind the company. That's also probably a good approach, but for me, that's not a good approach, because like I really, am not one to like give up lightly, or maybe ever. Like I'm like, the biggest thing I learned from my last company was like to give up earlier, like because it's a game of momentum. And so as soon as you start to lose momentum, it's really hard to get it again. And also timing is really important, even more so in the crypto space. Like things happen overnight, right? Like when ordinals hit, it was like, you know, it was out of the blue. I was fortunate to have already been running like 60 Twitter spaces, and I was in the middle of like revamping our entire Twitter space strategy because the other one wasn't working. And then it just hit, and we were there. And then it was like I normally ran like um four Twitter spaces a week, or three Twitter spaces a week. And then like the weekend was coming up, and then I just hit up Jan, who's the co-host of the Ordinal show, and I was like, dude, I was like, what should we do? And he's like, let's just do it. Let's just do Twitter space. So we just did like a 5 hour Twitter space on Saturday and Sunday, and that was like really where like I picked up momentum as like someone known in that space, in the ordinal space, and started to get a lot of people who appreciated like the content and the speakers that we had, and we started getting invited onto other Twitter spaces, and that opened like a lot of doors for me. And that was all because it was just like acting quickly, like jumping on it right away. And so, I think yeah, like I'm like in the second phase of the game now. Like I'm like applying all the lessons that I learned from doing it wrong for like a very long time, and like doing it as wrong as possible. Like, I had to learn the hard way, and now like I'm grateful to be like kind of in the second stage of my career, and like leveraging those lessons.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that is frustrating for anybody starting out is that you also feel like by a certain age you need to achieve certain amounts, or and that can be like a mental block when, because maybe you get to age 29, 30, or and you haven't reached where you want to be. But what would be your advice of how to like think long term, but also find success in between then, and not feel discouraged to then just get a job?
Yeah, I think that that's a very unhealthy like mindset, right? So um like you can see so many people, like even my one of my mentors in university, like he always told me, like I was doing a lot of cool stuff in university, like I ran all these different student groups, and like I was doing like cool stuff, and one of my mentors was like, I hope, he said that, I hope you don't become successful until you're 35. And I was like, why are you hoping that? Like, like that's not a like that seems like not a good one. He said though, like, that what he's seen with people where success early on can also be, depending on who you are, like it can change, who you are, right? Like, of course, like, um, power changes people, success changes people. But I think like if you've had a failure, like that's a really valuable experience because it can keep you humble. And I think that you know the entrepreneurs who have had a failure are always like much more pragmatic, and at least if they've learned from it, right? Like, and the smart ones who have failed, um, they always have a much more like, they're always just much better, right? Like they always are trying to look for every advantage that they can have in the space. Whereas, people who like the success can maybe make you like lazy, let's say, or maybe it could like the goal is like where you're going to be in 100 years, right? Like at the end of your life, like that's when the race ends, right? It's like when you're in your 80s and your 90s, right? And so if you're super successful in your 20s, and like you like a lot of it is luck, right? Like a lot of it is that timing, luck. Um, in my 20s, like there's no way that if I was successful in my 20s, and then I look back, and like I would probably like think a lot of things I did that weren't essential to my success like were essential. You know what I mean? And I probably wouldn't have a good bearing on like what works and what doesn't work. And I probably just try to do that again. And that could work, but there's very few people who like every ball hit it out of the park, right? And so, and I think even like if you look at like Elon Musk or some of these great entrepreneurs, like, he started his first company and sold it for like $20 million. Then he started PayPal and, sold it and made $100 million. And then he started Tesla and SpaceX. And so the idea is like, um, to really just focus on learning and improving yourself, and then upping your game every single time, and staying intellectually humble. Like the more like you um, become full of yourself, like let your ego take over, or misunderstand your own success, like you're going to be in a bad place. And so I think the point is like to play the long game, and but also like don't put off those things in your life that you want that have nothing to do with your career. I think that's a big mistake that a lot of founders make. I still make it today, but like after my first company, when things started to calm down, because I was just like coding all day. Like I had to for a couple years like catch up on all these things I didn't do for my life. You know what I mean? Like going to the gym, improving my health, like, and that's because you get in this mode where you like entrepreneurs are always overconfident in themselves, and you're like, oh well, I'm just gonna like have an exit, and then I can do that stuff later. But and maybe that's fine, but like if you take it too far, you could end up like really missing out on the things that you should have had, experiences you should have had, friendships you should have made, um, and things that you wanted to improve in your life, and that could be a regret that you might have. So I think like balancing, having some work life balance, like ironically, right? Like, but it's up to you. Probably not too much, not too much balance. Like
Yeah.
if you're someone who hates work life balance, then you need some work life balance. If you're
Yeah.
someone who loves work life balance, you probably don't need work life balance.
That's a great rule of thumb, actually. Um, Question: have you had to check yourself and you like your ego sometimes has that happened to you?
Yeah, like in small like ways. Like, unfortunately, I was never successful enough to have it do it in a big way, I think. But um, um, yeah, like small things, like even when when you raise money and like from VCs, like it happens all at once. So when I raised my first company, I had spent like a year trying to raise money and like getting had my time wasted by so many investors, and like kind of like, oh, it's like someone leading you on, like everyone's leading you on. Then it finally happens and everybody comes back like, oh, like Trevor, like I always believed in you, why didn't you tell me you were doing this? Like, it's like I told you like 100 times. And then you like, that's like a moment where you know I was like, and also like this kind of opportunity as well. Like, I think when you're a founder and you're raising money, you don't want to be too picky, because again, you're going to have your 15 minutes, and you kind of like, that clock is going to run up quickly, and so you want to like make the best of it to involve as many people as you can who can support your company. And if you, in that moment, you're like I did, I'm like, it felt like I've been climbing up a mountain and like there's no sun, and then finally get to the top and the sun is beautiful, and like God is like, you've made it, my son, and then like you can't like bask in that sunlight, you know what I mean? You got to be like just ready to go, and like someone's like, oh, I always believe in you, and then you got to be like, even though it's like they're bullshitting you, you got to be like, I know you did, like here's the deal documents.
So, question regarding so I think one of the things coming into the space, like VC funding, has really been like top of like mind, and that's what's been going on a lot. But can you do like a mini crash course on VC funding? And I mean, I know that's a lot, but just for anyone new coming in, sometimes we hear like VC backed, an NFT project or something like this, and like, what does that really mean? And yeah, just a little bit for those that may not know.
Yeah, so I mean, at a basic level, like venture capital is um, a sector of the finance industry where they invest in early stage companies. It's similar to private equity, but private equity tends to um, take control of businesses and staff the team, and then look for an exit. And they usually look at more mature businesses. Um, and with in startups, it's like VC is going to invest in a large portfolio of companies, and then help each one as much as they can, or try to provide some help like in key strategic moments. But they're mostly like a passive investor, not as much as like uh, like if you buy some stock, like you're a real passive investor. But I think that founders, VCs get a lot, like way too much credit in the space, and founders always think that if you haven't raised a VC, like you think they're going to do more, but they kind of like give you a brand, they give you like the vetting, like and the reputation, and then they help you with like maybe key hires, or they help you with uh, like an exit or finding other investors. Like, I think probably the best job of a VC is to help you get more investors. And just like with Bitcoin Frontier Fund, we're different because we run an accelerator program, so we actually work hands on for 4 months, and so we provide a lot of services in those 4 months, and then afterwards we're like more like a normal investor, where we um, like we still meet with our founders. Like, we have events at like Bitcoin Miami. We're gonna have an event at NFT NYC, and like my calendar is always open to our founders. But really, it's like um, in general, investors aren't going to do much to change the success of your company. Like, they will give you some like social proof to help you get more investors, but and eventually, like, you'll have investors who take a board seat on your company, and they'll be more involved, but they still won't be like that deeply involved. A typical VC, like in a large fund, will have sit on like 8 board seats, 7 or 8 board seats. So they're doing like 7 or 8 companies at once while also running their fund and getting more deal flow and things like that. So, but VC is a great career path, I think, or it's a very fulfilling career path. Unfortunately, a lot of VCs have never started businesses, and they like the MBA's like dream path, who like doesn't want to like roll up their sleeves and start their own thing and like take a risk, which is not the best, because it's like, if you want to, it's like the difference between like a chef and like a food critic. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if you have a culinary institute run by food critics, it probably wouldn't be like the best education, as compared to like Gordon Ramsay teaching you how to cook. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like the Gordon Ramsay VC is like the founder who's like, really dedicate their whole life to building stuff, and then they get tired. They're tired. Their energy level goes down, so they become a VC. So
Yeah, they take the back seat in a way. So, at Bitcoin Frontier Fund, what do you look for? What are you looking for right now in a company? If you like the qualities, but also like types of products and services that you want to see being built in the Bitcoin space.
yeah, so we're looking at layer one a lot, like Bitcoin. So underexplored technologies like partially signed Bitcoin transactions. We really look for a team where it's like 3 co-founders. There's something magic about the number, about having 3 co-founders. Like, we invested in a couple solo founders, like, and just to test it out. It's like impossible to. I mean, you can be like the same company that has like one superstar. Like, if they had 2 more superstars, they would just be destroying it, right? It's like, I think of it like a triangle. So, and if you think about like uh, like a startup is trying to discover the reality of the market, right? And so if you have like one perspective, you like one human can never identify reality because it's only one perspective. When you have 2 perspectives, you have such a richer and more colorful perception of reality, and then the third perspective kind of gives you the final definition. So if you think about that, it's like, we see the world in 3 dimensions, right? Like, if you're a solo founder, you're looking at the world in 1 dimension. 2 co-founders, 2 dimensions, and then 3 co-founders, like, you finally can see it in 3 dimensions. If you look at like um, a cell phone, like GPS, like, if you have one tower, that tower cannot locate where you are GPS wise. If you have 2 towers, there's still like a big gap, but if you have 3 towers, it can like pinpoint your location within like, I don't know, 10 meters or something. There's also like several situations that require 3 people. Like, if you are trying to secure a large facility, you need 3 security guards: one to watch the cameras, one to patrol the outside, and one to patrol the inside. Right? If you're a bunch of firefighters to like fight a fire, like, you need like one person to go in and get survivors, one person to like use the hose to like hose down. You need a backup person in case like the person inside like can't get out, right? If you're doing a surgery, you can't do it with fewer than 3 people, right? So it's like, uh, a startup is like one of the hardest things to do in the world, and like, there's so many activities that like 3 people are necessary for, and so that's why we have a big thing about like 3 founders, and specifically like 3 all stars is the goal. So it's like, if you and it forms a triangle. So it's like, if you have like one all star, you have like a small triangle. If you have 2 all stars, you have like a triangle that's the parts are separated, and like the peak is low. But if you have 3 co-founders, like, you have a huge mountain of a triangle. And so, we look at like cap tables. That's like always an easy way to see, is like, how did they divide equity? Because if you're like the CEO starting and recruiting your team, you're not gonna give a lot of equity to somebody that's not your equal, right? Like, it's ideally like a CEO should be recruiting people better than themselves, right? Like that's the best thing a CEO can do is like recruit people better than him or herself. And then, it's fine for the CEO to have a little more equity. Like we have some recommendations on our website about like how to split equity. But that's like a big tell. Whenever we see like a company where like the CEO has 90% and the other two co-founders have like 5%, it's like uh, it's definitely a no. Like um, and so we also look for a balanced skill set. So we look for like a business person, marketer, community builder, someone who can speak well and will be good at raising funding. We look for obviously strong technical CTO, more on the back end side and probably data side since we're in the blockchain industry. And then the third one would be also a developer, but a front end developer who knows design. So that way, if you and we call it like the hacker, the hipster, and the hustler. So it's like the hacker is the CTO, the hipster is the front end developer, and the hustler is the CEO.
Mm. Okay, so this is interesting. I actually want to pivot a little bit towards I don't know if this is similar, but when you're looking at a company and you want to invest in them, do you have similar metrics, or would you say the similar metrics to like doing your own business and investing in, like if you're just somebody coming into space, into a project, would you say somewhat similar? Because I think that when you first come in and you're new, you hear this often, do your own research, but it's like, how can you, like, what are the metrics or benchmarks that you would recommend for anybody? And are they similar to like investing in a founder or a company?
You mean like to decide to do an idea specifically, or
Um, Mainly more if you're new to the space and you want to like be a part of a project or if you want to be a part of a company. So not necessarily starting a business, but
and like to like how to know if it's successful to join it?
yeah, like what are the red flags? What are the green flags? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what you're looking for, right? So, and what your background is, and like what starting point you're coming from, right? So it's like if you have a non-traditional background, like I'm thinking of my buddy Eli Herf, who was like a school teacher before jumping into Web3 and then becoming the head of community growth at Gamma. Like you have to hustle. Like the bar is going to be much higher, and you're going to have to take a greater risk. Like you're gonna have to find a company that maybe hasn't raised funding yet and then try to join up and like probably pitch in for free until like you kind of want to like be helping for free, and then you end up like already doing the job for like a few months, and then like you're indispensable, and then you're like, hey, I have to leave now because I'm looking for a job, and then they're like, oh no, like can we hire you, like that's kind of like the foolproof way if you have a non-traditional background. I think if you have a more relevant background, like you've already worked for startups, you've been like a growth leader at a startup company, or you've been a developer at a startup company. Developers is much easier actually. Like for non-technical people, it's a lot harder because a developer, like you can more objectively evaluate their skill set quickly by like seeing what they've built. For a business person, like you kind of got to get a sense of like um, yeah, like you have to like it takes a longer time frame to ascertain their skills. And so what you can do is like I think if you are participating on like Twitter is the arena, like the number one marketing channel for all crypto and Web3 startups. And so if you're like active on Twitter, you're active on social media, you're creating content, that's the best way to um, separate yourself, right? Is like by just showing them what you're capable of. And then it comes down to like evaluating the company. So like one of the best ways is to talk to VCs because but you kind of gotta also like not just take it at face value. Like I know like sometimes a VC like it depends on like what their portfolio is, right? So like you're looking for like to join their hottest company, right? Like you're looking for to figure out from this VC like which one of the companies is doing the best, is like the most well run, is doing the best at fundraising, but like without asking those questions directly, right? So some VCs may even like recommend you to like the worst company in their portfolio that's really struggling because like maybe they over invested in it, and then
Mm.
like you're like really talented, so you
And
do
then
want to
you
be.
just go in there and do surgery.
I wouldn't go in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think if a company is off on the wrong start, like it's really hard to turn it around. So um, like when you build a startup company, you have to build like brick by brick. Like it's all about having a really strong foundation. The stronger the foundation, the taller you can build the skyscraper, right? So um, maybe for some people, like, well, there's this industry that's called like micro PE, where different investors, they will acquire companies that are misrun, but then they just kick everybody out. You know what I mean? Or they just like bring people on who just like maintain some things, and then they take it in a completely different direction, right? So if a company is not going well, it's usually um, a factor of the market, the timing is wrong, like the vision, the concept is wrong, or it could be team issues, or like doesn't have the right skill sets. It would be, I wouldn't want to be the one person to, I don't know, maybe I would, because maybe I'm like, that's a character flaw I have, but wanting to be a fixer. But I think if you are trying to work in the space, you want to like, this is a game where it's like there's going to be 100 companies and one is going to be like the next Facebook out of 100. You know what I mean? So and that's a, like, if you want to spend the next years of your life doing something, it would be great if that was the next Facebook, right? Instead of like one of the other like companies that, for all intents and purposes, might have a successful exit, but it won't be that rocket ship.
Yeah. And I guess pivoting a little bit towards Bitcoin, where do you see Bitcoin going? I know I saw one of your interviews prior, and you were kind of mentioning a few months ago, but things changed so much that, there's the flippening happening. Do you still think that that's going to be the case?
No, no, I think the flippening before ordinals, I thought that I was expecting the flippening to happen, but now I think it's not going to happen, because the momentum has changed, like the direction of the wind has changed, and there's now people see the massive opportunity on Bitcoin. My theory before was that, like, because the culture of Bitcoin has very much been like, oh, Ethereum is not legit, like none of that stuff is real, and we're just gonna keep trying to integrate payment systems, like we're just gonna keep trying to like work with Visa and MasterCard, even though Visa and MasterCard like cancel Bitcoin like every other year, their support for it, right? And now it's like, okay, like NFTs are real, non-fungible assets are real, digital art is real. um, there's things that we can learn from Ethereum, ZK rollups, there's opportunity to grow Bitcoin. Look at all the people coming back to Bitcoin. Um, it's been a real narrative violation, the whole thing around ordinals, and so I think it has opened people's minds to the potential for building on Bitcoin. And I think that we will end up in a space where I don't think Ethereum is going to go away, but I also think that Bitcoin dominance is going to grow going forward, and we've already seen it start to grow, and that the end game will be like Ethereum and Bitcoin probably, and maybe like a super high speed chain that's centralized like Solana. There'll be use cases for that for sure. I just think it'll be smaller with in respect to Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I think there was a stat that Eric Wall just tweeted about, where he said that the fully diluted market cap for Arbitrum and Optimism is like about 10 billion each. So that would put it on par with, and with Polygon, I guess it's like 15% of Ethereum's market cap. And so I think the market size for L2s on Ethereum is, it's already 15%, so probably up to 50% of Ethereum's market cap. I don't think that it will be larger than Ethereum's market cap, but I think the opportunity for L2s on Bitcoin is 100% to 300% of Ethereum's market cap. So because the L2s on Ethereum, sorry, the L2s on Bitcoin are actually going to be the biggest competitors with Ethereum, but I don't think that they will surpass it, I think that we will have and I hope they don't surpass. I hope they don't surpass it, honestly, because I hope that we have an industry where there's multiple options for people, where like everything that Ethereum does is a benefit to the entire industry because we give people more options, we learn from it. Um, Same thing with Bitcoin for starting this whole industry. Everything that Solana does is good for this entire industry, and so we need to have like different alternatives, and that's a really healthy thing.
Yeah, I think that's really great that a point that you mentioned, because I feel that when you're in the community, you kind of tear each other apart a lot on like what's better and what's not, and ultimately we it's not like we're not trying to fight with each other. It's like the system that's effed up, and we're trying to create something new, and um, it's just a great like I love hearing this because there competition is also healthy, and we learn from that, and um, yeah, so basically what you said. I guess pivoting a little bit more towards you, what are you most excited about currently in the space?
Yeah, definitely ordinals, of course. Let me think what else I'm excited about. I mean, I'm just excited about the experiments that people are doing on Bitcoin. So even seeing like there's like a sovereign rollup that was created where they are like using that to secure the data on Bitcoin, and like that kind of stuff is super exciting. So obviously I'm very big on stacks. But the reason I'm big on stacks is because I think it's the best technology, because I think it's and I think that the idea of building L2s on Bitcoin is a massive opportunity, or Bitcoin layers. I'm getting more excited about, like, of course I'm very excited about Bitcoin L1. I'm getting more excited about Lightning and Noster. Um, some of the like some of the questions around the centralization of Lightning kind of concern me. I'm trying to like figure those out and like go out there and talk to the smartest people to figure out like what their suggestions are. I also think like there's a bit of a contradiction in like the way people are going about things, because like Lightning is supposed to be like the same values of Bitcoin, but then like you look on like Noster and you see the majority of the wallets that people are using are custodied wallets. They're not like self custody wallets. You look at Noster and they're using like the DNS from like the HTTP. It's like your name system is going to be Trevor.com, not like Trevor.btc or Trevor.eth. You know what I'm saying? And it's like there's kind of an aversion, still like this like residue of an aversion to like acknowledging that there's anything else outside of Bitcoin that actually is good. You know what I mean? And so I think that's a blind spot, and that like anytime I see that type of cognitive dissonance, it's always like a red flag in anything. If you're like and you're investing in an entrepreneur and you're talking with them, if they have any cognitive dissonance, it's like an immediate red flag. Like what you want to see is like someone who is very balanced and objective. You want to see somebody who's like that's like the number one sign I look for is cognitive dissonance, to like not invest in somebody. So it's like if I'm talking to them, like say like, what about this? Did you think about this? And then I see that like they thought about it. Like sometimes you'll see a situation where you ask an entrepreneur questions, and this goes for developers. Like I'm saying, like in the Lightning or whatever, where it's like, hey, did you consider using a decentralized name system from a blockchain? Like if their answer is like, yeah, but that's a shitcoin, or yeah, that's like like what's the purpose of that? Then you like it's like, so you did like you thought about it, but you didn't actually like consider it, like, or like sometimes they'll give you reasons why it would be a good idea to do that, and then they're not doing that. You know what I mean? So it's like whenever you find this type of like cognitive dissonance, then that's like a immediate red flag that like people are not acting rationally. And probably like in entrepreneurship and in technology, more important than IQ is rationality. Like the ability to look at data and to take the most rational action. Like rationality is more related to judgment. IQ is more related to fluid intelligence, pattern recognition, problem solving, and that's really good for like optimizing something. Like if you want to make an algorithm faster and faster, like fluid intelligence is like super important. If you want to decide to hire somebody or to fire somebody, or you want to decide to pivot your company, like this is all rationality, this is all judgment. And a lot of times there's people who, like studies have shown, there's people with very high IQ who make very irrational decisions. Like there's like, people who in like were very high IQ, but they invested in like some scam or something like that, and they lost all their money. Versus like, um, there's a whole field around like rationality and how it's a different type of process, mentally, and it actually deals more with being self-aware of cognitive biases and overcoming those, right? And so when you find somebody who's really smart but they're not able to overcome their cognitive biases, it doesn't matter. Like you have to be extremely rational and self-aware to the point where you can make the best decision, right? Not like an emotional based decision, because emotion is always more powerful than logic in terms of how we make our decisions. Like no matter how smart you are, no matter how logical you are, the people who are very very high IQ but less rational will come to the craziest conclusions because they were able to problem solve themselves in the wrong direction. Like they were able to like take a situation that like was hard to justify. Like they'll say like, oh, like they may emotionally be attracted to doing the wrong thing, and they're so smart they will figure out the perfect logic for why that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I've seen this happen before. So similar along the veins, I think. What would you say is going to take to have more people come into the space, like the masses, and what is missing, and what do you feel is the key for that?
I think we need more education on like how to build on Bitcoin L1. Like I think there's a lot of like protocol level like education, but the Bitcoin community in terms of the developer community is way more opaque than Ethereum, than Stacks, and any of these other communities, because you know by the fact of like Ethereum having its own token that actually has capital to do stuff. It has capital to like recruit developers. It has capital to host hackathons. It has capital to hire like people to do marketing for it. And a lot of Bitcoin maxis like they kind of like resent that, but that's like capitalism. Like that's like free markets. Like if I think of like the difference between like, let's say like Bitcoin and Stacks versus like Bitcoin and another layer that has no token. I would much rather uh, be working in the one that has a token for a couple reasons. Well, one is that you need it from a technological perspective. Interestingly, like if you think about Bitcoin, every block you get like 6.25 Bitcoin, the miners. That's called the security subsidy. So it's meant to subsidize the security. Eventually, there's going to be no more Bitcoin generated from that mining. It's going to be all fees. But right now, fees are like before ordinals. The fees for miners from actual transactions, as opposed to the Coinbase reward, was like 0.5%. Now with ordinals, it's like 4%, 3 or 4% steadily, which is amazing. But it needs to get to 100% in 3 years, or the security will go down. Michael Saylor made like a really bad tweet where he thought that like the faster your ASICs is, like the more security Bitcoin has. That's actually not how it works. The higher the security budget from fees and the Coinbase reward, the more secure Bitcoin is. That's the only factor that matters to make it secure. And so if you're starting a new blockchain like Stacks, you need a security subsidy to get things off the ground. Otherwise, you'll have to be centralized. And so that's why the other blockchains that don't have the other side chains, for example, that don't have a token, are centralized, because they decided not to do a token, which means they have no security subsidy, which means they're manually securing it themselves, which is and then for the token, it's a capital flywheel. It's like I used to work for big corporations to help teach them how to innovate, and like they would never want to spin out a startup company, and that is like the critical flaw. It's like if you try to have a startup within inside a big company and you pay people a salary, they're going to act like employees, not like entrepreneurs. If you are a big company and you act like a VC, and you take a equity and you spin it out and give them equity, they're going to act like entrepreneurs. Just like you have a salesperson, you're not going to compensate a salesperson with 100% salary, or they're not going to sell anything. You give them a an incentive to do that, right? And so if you're creating a layer two, it's like it's like a startup that has its own cap table or its own incentive, right? So having people be able to speculate on a token is a good thing for that network, right? Because that's going to bring people in, that's going to get people to build on it, to have skin in the game, and it's also a flywheel that allows you to have a foundation that does developer marketing, that improves the developer tools, like and I don't think Bitcoin needs that, but I think if you want to create an L2 that competes with Ethereum on top of Bitcoin, you need that. Otherwise, Ethereum has this is a Ethereum has billions of dollars, right? Like to to do that today, like if it was like 10 years ago, you wouldn't have to do that, right? Like just the market forces would like take care of it. But today we're in a very different environment where you're competing on the scale of billions of dollars. And so if you don't have that capital flywheel and that ability for people to have skin in the game, you're just going to get destroyed in the market because no, like if you have millions of dollars, like you can't compete with billions of dollars. It's like showing up to a gunfight with a knife. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think this, I mean, thank you for this. And I actually want to begin to wrap up a little bit. But before then, what would you say is like your advice for founders right now, with with the markets of where we are? What's your like number one advice that you would give them?
And what stage founder do you think? Like someone just
Startup.
starting out?
Yeah, just starting out.
Um, I think the biggest advice is just to like take a shot. Like like the best way to learn is by failing. Like that's the that's the thing. So it's like if you're not putting yourself out there and you're not failing, you're not going to get there. Like you have to have sort of a masochistic tendency to like be good at this game. And so you have to be able to you know um like you need to be the type of person where like if you have like you like you're at a public event and then like people are like, does anyone want to say something, and then like you're the first person to raise your hand, and then you embarrass yourself in front of everybody, and then like that's the type of person you need to be willing to be. Like you need to be willing to make mistakes, to be like super cringe, to embarrass yourself. If you're not willing to put yourself out there and do that, um at least a little bit, right? Like at least like more over time, then it's gonna take you a lot longer, right? So like the people who it's like they when I was like in university, one of my mentors who was like a VC who held the entrepreneurship class, the name of the class was Ready, Fire, Aim, right? So it's like if you're like ready, aim, fire, like you're never gonna get started. And I think if you're new at this game, you want to be like very much in the camp of like ready, fire, aim. It's like a weird balance, but then at the same time, the better you get, you will sort of be more of like the measure twice, cut once. And I think in like building technology, like really finding that balance is like the hardest thing. But I think if you're just getting started, like as a founder, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to embarrass yourself, um, and like socially, and like to market your company, to like let people know what's going on. But then when it comes to actually like making critical decisions, like what's your product going to be, what's the feature going to be, who's your customer, that's where you want to measure twice, cut once. Like you want to do as much lean startup as you can. You want to validate the market. You want to spend the time up front about what your process is going to be and who the team is going to be. um, and then on the flip side, like you want to put yourself out there and not be afraid to fail, like and you won't be able to understand the unknown unknowns. So you need to surround yourself with mentors. You need to surround yourself with other people. The best entrepreneurs in our portfolio, not only are they the most experienced, like I think like among the best founders, like in our portfolio, at least half of them are like in their 40s. And so and those founders, even compared to the founders in their 40s in our portfolio, compared to the founders in their 30s, ask way more questions, ask for advice way more, and they also are like more like diligent or more consistent in what they do. So I think it's just interesting because you would think like, and maybe like a lot of founders in their 20s ask a lot of questions too, but it's kind of counterintuitive how the most experienced and the like oldest founders are also, and who are some of the best, are also the most curious, ask like us like the most basic questions, you know, and just have that mindset of like, uh, every question I ask, I get better, right? Every person I meet, uh, like another person is a fan. You know what I mean? Like they're looking for every single advantage they can get, and that resourcefulness is a big part of this.
Yeah, and I think it's like exactly what most people or most founders don't want to do. Like it's like I don't want to be embarrassed, or like they're overthinking, and it's like no, just go out there, do ask questions, and kind of get dirty. Okay, as we wrap up, I want to just ask, what do you do outside of Web3, outside of Bitcoin? What's your fun getting your replenishment with all this technology and always being on?
Yeah, I mean, I go to the gym. I mean, or I used to, like I really don't do much. I mean, I used to be a co-owner of an esports team, like many years ago. Um, so I try to have hobbies, as well. Like I'm obviously a big supporter of the Crash Punks project, like getting involved that to experiment with NFTs and what's going on there. And I run Ninja Alerts, so I have a company and a fund. So I really don't have a lot of time for a life, but yeah, no, I think I yeah, like just try to stay as healthy as I can. I go to a lot of conferences to meet people. I'm kind of involved in Ethereum and in Bitcoin and in stacks, and getting involved in more communities. So if I had more time, I would definitely focus more on like health and fitness, um, traveling. I would do more coding for fun. Like these are things I would probably do. I'm thinking I'm getting into like streaming, because the Web3 gaming space I think is about to take off right now. We're seeing like Dead Drop. We're seeing like which is a Doctor Disrespect game that's being really popular with NFTs. We're seeing like more games come out now. So I'm looking to get into streaming. Like for
Okay.
me, like the my hobbies are like figuring out what the next thing is going to be.
That's your fuel. Okay,
Yeah.
so I do a lightning round, which is a series of questions that are meant to just be try not to overthink them and answer them as fast as possible. Ready?
Yeah.
Cool. What's your favorite book?
How to Win Friends and Influence People, and then On Writing Well by William Zinser.
Okay. And your go-to drink?
Uh, Seltzer, like yeah, like
Yeah.
sparkling water. Yeah, I can't live without it. Yeah.
I actually love sparkling water.
Yeah.
The one thing you can't stand.
Mm, people who are assholes, that are disingenuous, and they argue in bad faith.
Yeah. Your biggest NFT fail, like in terms of purchasing.
Oh, so many. Um,
This is what most people say.
yeah, I'd have to look at my hidden folder on OpenSea because I
You
don't even
just
remember them.
delete
Yeah.
that. Delete
Yeah.
delete it from
Yeah.
your mind.
Yeah.
um, your favorite place on earth?
Oh wow. That is a good one. I think there's so many. I mean, um, yeah, I would say like in a general sense, like New York City is one of my favorite places on earth. Seoul, South Korea is one of my favorite places on earth.
Mm,
Yeah, like I'm a big city person.
okay.
So I think like the more stimulation, the better. Like the more like people in close proximity, the better. The
Yeah.
more diversity, the better. So
Okay. And the last question: what do you love most about yourself?
well, I shaved it off, so
Okay. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure just chatting with you, picking your brain. It's always fun. And where can people hang out with you? Of course, Twitter
On
as
Twitter,
TO.
yep, at TO, Twitter Spaces. I'm always looking for people to come up on the stages on Twitter Spaces. So if you're not there to shill your NFT project or some like token, then like come on up. We love to talk
Yeah,
to people. So I'm always looking for people to join my Twitter Spaces and contribute to the combo.
cool.
Yeah, that's the best place to hang out.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you've loved this conversation, share with someone, retweet it. It helps just the pod to grow and, of course, have more incredible guests. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Trevor, again.